What is going on, guys? And welcome to episode 21. I am your host, Marcus. And in this episode, we're talking about the fear of growing to be alone. This is something I think we all kind of dread, especially if you've had any kind of long term relationship and essentially you disconnect from that relationship, perhaps through a divorce or something like that. You realize, will I be alone for the rest of my life? Or you could perhaps even go the opposite way, and maybe you've not married, you've been through a lot of different relationships, now in your 30s, now you're starting to wonder, well, where do I go from here? Am I going to be alone for the rest of my life? And thinking about this particular topic, we are biologically essentially programmed to essentially procreate, to seek out the opposite sex and procreate. That's what we are, again, biologically programmed to do. But being said, you get to a point to where, you may not find the correct relationship and you realize that, I don't want to be alone. Or perhaps you feel like you're good at majority of the time, but there are those times when you feel very much alone. And even for myself, I feel like this from time to time. From time to time, I feel like, well, maybe I'll just grow alone by myself. And I know there's some staggering statistics about, your life expectancy, especially when you are alone. I think your life expectancy essentially goes down by like 30% or something like that, just because you are alone. Now, I'm not here to scare you about that or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that what it is you want that someone there to share events of your life with, someone to essentially perhaps even go home and talk about your day. But the ultimate thing to understand is that void there is something that we always going to need. There's no easy answer to just say go out there and it's just going to go away. But I can tell you some things that would help tremendously, and that is to, stop worrying specifically about another person being in your life, because this leads to a lot of different issues to where, personally, where you are looking for anybody to fill that void. You are looking for something that you're expecting a lot. You put a lot of high expectations on the other person when someone comes into that relationship. And so any kind of relationship would be strained because of that fact that, perhaps you are getting older and you start worrying, well, I don't want to grow old. So, you look upon the other person a lot more with more defined eyes, right? And realize that, again, I've talked about happiness before, and that happiness is within yourself. It's a state of mind that you can change at any moment. And when you come into a situation where you feel like, well, I'm getting old and I don't want to be alone, so you can't leave me, a kind of mentality, that is going to put a lot of stress on a relationship in itself, as opposed to living your own life and how important that is. And a lot of times, I think when you get into a relationship, if you aren't going out and doing your own things, it can put a lot of stress on the relationship. And if you guys are too much together, even though you may enjoy your time around each other, you may enjoy all these other different things, it is good to also have other activities that are apart from each other, other interests that are apart from each other. So you realize that by doing this, that the separation that you have a little bit helps tremendously and helps build that bond where, when you're so worried about, well, I don't want to lose you, so I got to constantly be there for you and I got to wait hand and foot, right? That is a wrong mentality to pursue any kind of relationship. And when you're talking about being alone, there's a big reason why we don't want to be alone, because a lot of times we don't want to be with essentially that voice in your head, right? And I've talked about your roommate in your head and how it may talk very negative towards you about, I'm just not good enough. I need to have someone in my life. I'm getting older. I don't know how much longer, right? I want someone to be able to give my possessions to if I shall pass. You start thinking about all these different ideas and stuff. And when ultimately you could be using that time and that energy to building something. And this is why I talk about building something a lot, because it helps shift your focus. Because again, if you are so consumed by the thought of being alone, you're going to be out there constantly looking for a relationship to fill that void, as opposed to just going on about your day. And you realize that by doing this and having your focus shift on something else specifically, that you can go about your day and you'll probably actually run across somebody that will essentially be your teammates and allow you to grow together, foster together, go do things together, and then also do many things apart to build that bond. But again, if you are just seeking, well, I need someone because I'm getting old, you realize that you've already coming into the situation with a very stressful atmosphere, and you're putting a lot of stress on that person. Although initially it may not seem that way, because there will more than likely be a honeymoon phase at that point. But when the honeymoon phase wears off, you realize that you're perhaps catering for that person too much. You're probably suffocating that person, essentially because you're just so worried about, well, what if I am alone? And this talks about a lot of different things. It could be even current relationships that you're in. And a lot of times we don't want to leave a relationship because of the fact that we feel like, well, I just don't want to be alone, so I can't leave this relationship, even though that relationship may be extremely damaging to everything in your life, right? And the only thing it does give you is it gives you a routine, and you're used to that routine. You're used to expecting negative things in that environment, so it's nothing new. So you're okay with that, as opposed to realizing that I just rather not be alone and not understand what is going to happen at that point. So being said, just shifting your focus on what matters, on building yourself, on building things out. And I think that's extremely important, no matter what it is, no matter what kind of life events. And when you're really talking about, being lonely, it's because you don't feel like you have essentially a purpose. And a lot of times defining purpose is seeking things that you lose, again, sense of time and self, finding those things. Because when you can find those things, perhaps it's something that you can put into a business and build it out, or write about it, build something, right? You want to build something off of that you're losing sense of time and self. And you realize that by doing this, it helps shift the focus, as opposed to that one person, again, in that relationship, or perhaps worrying about, well, I don't have somebody and I'm getting old and I don't like it. And, again, creating that atmosphere that when someone comes in is going to be toxic for both of you. And understanding that and realizing, okay, I'm just going to live my life. I'm okay by myself. I don't need somebody, and realize that and work towards that. And again, it's not always the easiest thing, especially if you've been in a relationship for a very long time, or perhaps you haven't had a relationship. All your relationships have been temporary. Just understand that, you want to, again, shift focus on those things that matter to you, and positive things that will build your life and your purpose. Again, because we don't want to go into any kind of relationship, if there is a relationship that comes and we wonder why we can't hold on to people in our relationships, is probably because we're putting too much strain on them to entertain us, to do all these other different things, because we are looking to fill a void. And we had all these big expectations that are never actually communicated to the other person, right? But we hold these things to high standards in our heads, and then when somebody doesn't actually check off these things, these high standards that we essentially accumulate in our head, right? We like to ping them about it, and then initially it starts as a small just discussion, if even a discussion, or perhaps even builds up and explodes, and then there's a fight and all different kinds of other issues. So understanding that, again, you need to have something, you need to have separate activities that are going to help you build yourself out. You need to address yourself and be comfortable with yourself. And it's extremely important. And I talk about meditation and being in the now, because it's important, because when you're in the now, right, you have to address whatever issues you may have inside. A lot of times we'd much rather feel that void or run away from it than actually think about our true thoughts and feelings and actually act upon those, as opposed to just brushing it off like, no, I'm okay, just covering up and keep kicking that can down the road till eventually we will have enough when we start getting anxiety and depression or become angry or whatever the case is because of the fact that we aren't releasing that and shifting our focus on something, again, that could be more positive in our lives and allow ourselves to build ourselves out and not have to worry about, well, if I am alone, if I'm not, that is not my sole purpose. Yes, we are by nature, we like being social creatures, right? We like having somebody around. But again, it's not that we can't do it, right? You can find other ways of doing it even, and it doesn't have to be a relationship, right? You can get into groups with like-minded people, and it's not quite the same thing, but you feel like you get that pump, you get that energy from other people, and enjoy it around being around those other people, right? And then you get that break, because sometimes even in a relationship, right, all you want is a break to step away, catch your breath, just kind of give it your thoughts and feelings, right? And sometimes you just don't get that in a relationship. But when you're in a group, you can go out and communicate and have fun, have a good time, and ultimately understand that, I can go back home and recharge. And then when I'm ready, I can go back out with this community, perhaps meet new friends. You might even develop a relationship out of these groups. And it's better to find a relationship with groups with like-minded individuals because, again, they have something in common that you can essentially build off of, as opposed to, worrying about, well, my clock is ticking, and right. And I think at that point, when you start looking at stuff as your clock is ticking, yes, we are all, we only have an allotted amount of time in our lives, but again, you don't want to shift all the focus on that, because you, again, are creating just an environment that is really bad for the both of you. But even for me, I like to keep busy. And I think that's what's important. So if you do have something that you can build and create, it will help. It will help with the loneliness. And then getting out with like-minded groups. You may be an introvert and you say, well, I'm introverted. I really can't get out and talk to other people. But when you come around other people, I think this is the biggest misconception about introverts too, is the fact that you can talk to other people. People just aren't talking about specifically things that you maybe want to be talking about. Did you realize that once you are actually talking about something that sparks your interest, you can actually hold a conversation for quite a long time? But being said, I think, one of the biggest things going into this, you'll have downtimes, right? It's just like goods and bads, they always come, especially when the loneliness part happens. And it is important during those times that you have perhaps family, perhaps friends, or something that you can just call up, perhaps just get it off your shoulders, just talk. Because a lot of times that's just what we need, is just someone to listen to us briefly, to help us gather our thoughts, get us back on track and continue down the road. And again, not putting so much stress on, well, I got to find someone because my clock is ticking, right? I think everything happens for a reason. If there's no one in your life now, whether you've had a lot of people in your life before, whether you are currently with somebody, whether you are looking to exit a relationship, or perhaps have never really had a long-term relationship, I think it's important to know, again, how to deal with who you are, right? Face who you are, be comfortable with who you are, build that out. Because a lot of times I've seen it in a lot of social platforms. A lot of people just aren't comfortable with themselves, and a lot of people will gravitate to those other people that are on social media that talk about this stuff, and a lot of people gravitate towards that because they all feel the same, and so they all feed off this negative energy. Whereas opposed to, you can go out and when you have the confidence in building in yourself, again, it's not going to be 100%, but you can go out, you can exercise, you can do a bunch of other different things that will help you regain focus on what really matters. Again, sometimes, you may go a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks to get over this hump about being alone and not having anybody there. You can just randomly call for no reason. It can be tough. Again, I've been there, I've done that, I've gone through the cycles, I continue to go through the cycles, but ultimately understand that what you need to do again, is have something to build off of, because you don't want to again be sitting there in front of a TV or out to an event or something like that, because a lot of times we won't even do events, we won't even go to movies, we won't even do any of these things because we don't have somebody with us, or perhaps that friend is busy, perhaps they're in a relationship, and so that makes you feel bad, and like you need to have someone there to help fill that gap. And again, it can be hard, but you have a lot more flexibility than you think you have when you are by yourself, and realize that a lot of the different things that you enjoy right now are perhaps things that you may have to adjust or compromise when you are with somebody else. And in knowing this and knowing the difference, that there are always pros and cons to being in a relationship, to being out of a relationship, but ultimately understand that being alone, you should be comfortable with it, and find, again, hobbies that will help, like-minded people that will help. And again, you feel like that helps draw the process out and helps you overcome the day. One of the biggest things I think you think about coming out of a relationship is, man, I'm just going to be alone, right? You just mark yourself as being alone right away, as opposed to letting yourself get over that relationship. And that is one of the first things that click into your mind, is that, well, this is it, right? I had my chance, I blew it. Or maybe they blew it, maybe you blew it, maybe a combination of both is typically what it is, not just one or the other. But just saying that, in understanding that you need to work on yourself. And when you start working on yourself, you're much more comfortable going into a relationship, not worrying about, this has to work because this is all I have, right? Maybe I've attempted, it's first time being out, maybe I've attempted being in relationships before, after that long-term relationship, and realizing that if this doesn't work out, I have nothing. And I don't want to make that leap. So you have to be careful. You have to be comfortable, again, with yourself, and realize that you don't need anybody, because a lot of times you do everything, you do a lot of stuff for yourself. And even from a guy's perspective, right? Like, I know, like, going out and doing laundry and doing all these things that maybe you don't typically do in a relationship when you're with a girl, or maybe a girl that's with a guy, right? Maybe she doesn't typically go out and mow the lawn like her husband or significant other would do, or whoever the case is. And you have to actually put the time and effort into those things, perhaps, that you don't want to do. And so you may think, well, it's nice to have that person there, but I am comfortable, I am capable of handling these things without somebody else. And that's ultimately where you want to get. You want to be able to be self-sufficient and be able to handle these things, handle your thoughts, your ideas, instead of running away from them. And I think that's the biggest concept I'm trying to disclose here, is that you have to, again, look internally and work on yourself, and stop looking for something that is external to help you fill a void that I don't think it needs to be filled. Yes, relationships do help. They help us grow and prosper. Yes, they make us feel better. But again, you shouldn't put everything on a relationship that is going to make you feel like, I have to have this. You need to be your own independent person, and realize that if I can be my own independent person without the reliance of somebody else, you're going to be more happy. Things will click better. Things will work better. You're actually producing in an environment in which, you both are happy, healthy, and cheering each other on, and have that teamwork that you're looking for, as opposed to going into a relationship that's going to be more like, no, you're supposed to do this for me, you're supposed to do that for me, I'm not going to communicate these things with you, right? Because some people don't communicate that ultimately, but understanding that there's still more there that needs to be done, the internal part. And if you are in a relationship now, work on yourself, right? We can't control our outside environments, but we can work on ourselves. We can correct ourselves. But with that being said, you have to ultimately understand too, that your environment should not be toxic. If your environment is toxic, you're not going to feel better, right? You can't get better in the same environment, essentially, that you've gotten sick. And being said, you have to remove yourself from that environment. Again, it can be very fearsome and with the uncertainty and everything that is going on, but understanding that, things will work out for the better. I'm okay by myself. I can handle it by myself. And even for myself, even coming out of high school, I was in many different relationships, longer term relationships, because of the fact that I didn't feel like I could essentially take on the world by myself. And I remember the first time, I think it was probably my mid 20s, when I really felt like, I didn't need somebody to be there. And I felt like, well, I'm okay now. Like, you constantly do that check. Like, I'm okay now. I'm still young, but I don't want to grow old. And so I think a lot of times you start pushing or making decisions that perhaps you typically wouldn't if you kept up yourself, maintain your mental state, maintained what you were doing and what you are building. And you realize that you aren't so reliant in looking for something to work and to click that may not be in your best interest, and understand that. But a lot of times, again, we want to force it because we are worried of this time span, and understanding that, yes, we could be gone tomorrow, but do we make a choice off of that because of the fact that, we don't want to just be alone. We just want someone there that will listen and understand that, and be okay with the fact that I can handle it without somebody else. And that takes a lot. That takes a lot of confidence building. It takes a lot of, this is why I talk about building and creating something, because that builds your confidence in yourself, and going out and doing things that will allow you to build confidence, like being curious and perhaps starting, mountain biking, or going out and doing karate, or doing something that is different and out of the normal, to tie up your thought process, to let you get out some energy, to not let yourself wind up about why you're not. And then you again start getting to that's depressive state on, well, I'm not good enough, and I'm not all these other different things, which essentially bleeds over to everything in life. And that is not what you want to do. Again, creating a toxic environment because you don't want to be the specific person, and you start asking questions, right? That roommate in your head starts telling you specific things about, well, how it's just not going to work, and how you're not good enough no matter what you do, no matter how much working out you do, no matter how much perhaps therapy or whatever you got to do, right, to help you do better, that it's just never going to be enough, when in fact that is not the case at all. When in fact that is just you shifting focus, and your focus being in the wrong spot. So if you can shift your focus in the correct spot and focus on yourself, this again will help yourself for when situations like this come up. Perhaps a relationship doesn't work out, you're okay to move on if you need to. And not only that, but the relationship you get into, right, you don't feel like you're suffocating that other person, which is extremely important. And knowing that you have to take a step back, and knowing that you're okay if they want to be a part of your life, if they want to team up with you, then let it be, but not allow that person so much control over you that, well, I can't just let you go because I have nothing, right? That's too reliant on somebody else. And so it's having that audit on yourself, and am I acting this way? And if I am, how do I change it? How can I correct it? Right, by going out again and getting in a group, or going out and actively doing something different from what that other person has done, or the typical things that you guys typically do together. Or perhaps if you haven't found anybody, just go out and seek those things. But ultimately, just not being heavily reliant, and face your fears of yourself, and ultimately why you don't want to be alone, right? Ask yourself, why don't I want to be alone? What in my life am I really missing, right? Am I building something for myself that helps me have a purpose? Maybe you built a business. Maybe you've created something that you are ecstatic about, that perhaps you would like to share someone, and just telling somebody isn't good enough, right? Right. There's other different means. Again, you can go out with groups or whoever, good friends, find somebody and share that. but you should never go seeking a relationship for that purpose only, is to have that person there to constantly wait on you hand and foot, right? You want to be able to be your own individual selves, and then you realize that over time you don't lose yourself in the other person if that relationship doesn't work, right? You have your own separate lives. Again, working as a team, not saying you guys aren't doing stuff together all the time, doing all these things, but you have your own separate things that allow you, right? You have your own different friends, you have different things. Not saying you can't mingle with that, but getting out and doing those things to allow yourself the new thoughts and ideas. So when you guys get together, you have something to talk about. You have stories you can exchange. You can have these different things, right? You have your own independent lives. So you don't lose yourself, because again, when you come out of a relationship, you tend to ask yourself, well, who am I? I don't even know who I am anymore. And I think that is what is most important.